Karen Allen's film debut came in Animal House, but behind the scenes, one nearly missed moment defined her experience. During a pivotal scene with Donald Sutherland, Allen hesitated, unsure about going through with it. It took an unexpected gesture from Sutherland to change her mind, convincing the budding star to continue. This incident is just one of many surprising behind-the-scenes tales from Animal House that you may not know about. One of the film's most unforgettable scenes is when the Delta fraternity members find themselves in a roadhouse full of African Americans, leading to palpable tension as they realize they're out of place. Initially, the studio was hesitant about including the scene, worried about public reaction. Director John Landis later revealed how close it came to being cut. Universal Pictures president, Ned Tannen, feared it might provoke racial backlash. Given the social climate of the late 70s, the studio preferred to avoid risks. However, comedian Richard Pryor, known for his fearless approach to race and comedy, intervened. Landis arranged a private screening for Pryor, who afterward wrote a brief, impactful note to Tannen: "Ned, Animal House is funny, and white people are crazy." With Pryor's endorsement, the scene remained, becoming an iconic moment. Another classic scene involves John Belushi's character, Bluto, causing chaos in the cafeteria with his outlandish antics, including the iconic "I'm a zit" gag. Almost all of Belushi's cafeteria actions were improvised, with Landis allowing the camera operator to follow Belushi's spontaneous energy. Belushi's off-the-cuff performance, from piling up food to his messy gag, became an unforgettable part of the film. Interestingly, Landis initially planned to appear as a cafeteria worker trying to stop Bluto, but that idea was ultimately scrapped. Donald Sutherland, who played Professor Jennings, nearly missed a major payday by doubting the film's success. When offered a part, he could choose between a $50,000 upfront payment or a small percentage of future profits. Thinking the film might flop, he took the upfront cash, missing out on what could have been a $3 million profit once the film became a hit. Initially, the cast was almost entirely different. The filmmakers hoped to recruit other Saturday Night Live stars, with Chevy Chase considered for Otter, Bill Murray for Boone, and Dan Aykroyd for D-Day. But scheduling conflicts and career moves led the director to cast lesser-known actors, helping the film stand apart from SNL. The success of Animal House prompted Universal Pictures to consider a sequel. The idea was to set the sequel in 1967, following the Delta brothers at Otter's wedding. However, when More American Graffiti, another 60s-themed comedy, flopped, Universal backed off. Then, in 1982, the tragic death of John Belushi ended any remaining hope for a sequel. One lesser-known challenge on set was getting the cast's hair to match the 60s aesthetic. The hairdresser faced issues, with some reports citing a lack of experience in 60s styles and others claiming they requested too much time off. Eventually, John Landis had to step in to resolve the situation. Taking matters into his own hands, he brought the Delta cast to a local barbershop and asked the barber if he could recreate hairstyles from the 1960s. The barber agreed, and right there in the shop, all the actors received era-appropriate haircuts, solving the problem. Keeping the frat house intact. With all the chaos and destruction portrayed in Animal House, you'd think the real fraternity house would have been left in ruins. Surprisingly, the University of Oregon building in Eugene, where filming took place, stayed mostly intact. The only lasting damage was a hole in the wall made by John Belushi during the famous guitar-smashing scene. The fraternity living in the house actually thought it was pretty cool. They didn't repair it but framed it with a plaque to commemorate the spot. Sadly, this piece of movie history didn't last, as the building was demolished in 1986, just 8 years after the film's release. Kevin Bacon's humble beginnings. Today, Kevin Bacon is a household name, but in 1978, he was an unknown. Animal House was his first movie, and he wasn't treated like a star. At the premiere, ushers didn't believe he was in the film, so he ended up sitting with the general audience at the back while the rest of the cast sat together. It's a funny story, especially considering Bacon's later success. He's now one of the most famous actors from the film's cast. The University of Oregon's redemption. Here's a lesser-known fact about Animal House. The University of Oregon allowed filming on its campus because the president didn't want to repeat a past mistake. Years earlier, the filmmakers of The Graduate had requested to shoot on campus, but the president denied them without even reading the script. After The Graduate became a massive hit, he regretted his decision. So, when Animal House came along, he was quick to give the green light. Although Animal House didn't win any Academy Awards, it became a comedy classic and gave the university a taste of Hollywood fame. A record-breaking success. No one anticipated the massive success of Animal House. With a modest budget of $2.7 million, the film needed to make twice that amount to be considered successful, but it surpassed all expectations, grossing $141.6 million, over 47 times its budget. Such profit margins were nearly unheard of, especially for a raunchy comedy. The short-lived TV spin-off. Though there was no Animal House sequel, it did inspire a TV spin-off called Delta House, which aired in 1979. Several actors reprised their roles, including John Vernon as Dean Wormer and Bruce McGill as D-Day, and the show introduced Michelle Pfeiffer in her first TV role as the bombshell. However, the network toned down the humor, leading to a diluted version of the film's edge. After just 13 episodes, the show was cancelled. Ivan Reitman almost directed. Before John Landis took the reins, Animal House's producers considered Ivan Reitman for the director role. Reitman, later famous for Ghostbusters and Twins, co-produced the film but had limited directing experience at the time. The producers opted for Landis, who had recently directed the Kentucky Fried Movie, believing he had the right comedic sensibilities. Reitman stayed on as a producer and went on to a successful career. The wild real-life Delta fraternity. The outrageous antics of the Delta fraternity in Animal House were inspired by real events. The script was based largely on the college experiences of writers Harold Ramis, Doug Kenney, and Chris Miller, with Miller drawing heavily from his time in the Alpha Delta Phi fraternity. However, some of Miller's wildest stories were deemed too extreme, so the final script balanced humor and chaos without crossing into cruelty. Meatloaf was almost cast as Bluto. While it's hard to imagine anyone but John Belushi as Bluto, Meatloaf was actually considered for the role. Known at the time for the Rocky Horror Picture Show, he hadn't yet achieved fame with his album, Bat Out of Hell. Ultimately, Belushi won the part, while Meatloaf continued his music career. Karen Allen's scene with Donald Sutherland. Karen Allen, later known for roles in Raiders of the Lost Ark and Starman, made her debut in Animal House. In one scene, her character Katie is in bed with Donald Sutherland's character, Professor Jennings. Initially, Allen wasn't comfortable with showing her behind on camera. To ease her nerves, Sutherland offered to bear his as well, which Allen later appreciated in interviews. Her willingness to be vulnerable made her reconsider, and she ultimately agreed to the scene, saying, "I thought he was so sweet to do that." Allen commented on it, and I thought, alright, if Donald's on board, then I'll do it too. Harold Ramis, on the other hand, was rejected for a role in the movie. Despite co-writing Animal House, Ramis initially envisioned himself as the character Boone, hoping to play the part. But director John Landis had a different idea. He felt Ramis, at 33, looked too mature to convincingly portray a college student. Consequently, the role went to Peter Riegert, who, though only slightly younger than Ramis, had a more youthful appearance. Ramis may not have ended up in Animal House, but he went on to star in and direct some of the biggest comedies of the 80s, including Stripes, Ghostbusters, and Caddyshack. Otis Day became a music icon beyond the film. One of Animal House's standout characters, Otis Day, the singer who performs Shout during the party scene, was played by Dwayne Jesse. Jesse embraced the role so thoroughly that he even changed his name to Otis Day legally. Though he lip-synced to Lloyd Williams' recording in the movie, Jesse's portrayal was so popular that he adopted Otis Day as his official stage persona. He even bought the rights to the character from Universal Studios to perform as Otis Day and the Knights in real life, a true case of art imitating life. Stephen Furst landed his role in the most unusual way, through a pizza delivery. Furst, who played the lovable Flounder, has one of the best Hollywood casting stories. At the time, First was making ends meet as a pizza delivery driver, and he'd slip his headshot and resume into pizza boxes whenever he delivered to someone in the entertainment industry. One day, he delivered a pizza to Maddie Simmons, the publisher of National Lampoon. Simmons noticed First's resume, decided to give him a chance, and after a successful audition, First was cast as Flounder. The rest, as they say, is history. There's also an interesting story behind the casting of Martha Smith as Babs in Animal House. Originally, she was supposed to play Mandy, the girl Bluto, John Belushi, spies on in the infamous ladder scene. But when Smith learned what the scene involved, she felt uncomfortable and requested to swap roles with Mary Louise Weller, who ended up portraying Mandy. This scene has since been criticized for its outdated depiction of women, but it was a common trope in comedies at the time. The iconic food fight scene isn't exactly what it seems. While Bluto's famous food fight, yell kicks off one of Animal House's most memorable scenes, the actual food fight lasts only a few seconds, with most of the food just being tossed in one big shot. Nevertheless, it's a scene so iconic that Animal House is often associated with food fights in film, even though it wasn't as chaotic as many might recall. Verna Bloom's improvised drunk scene is another memorable moment. Improvisation wasn't limited to John Belushi. Verna Bloom, who played Marion Wormer, also had her chance. In her scene with Dean Wormer, where she drunkenly calls the mayor, Bloom's performance was improvised. Director John Landis wasn't pleased with how the scene had originally been scripted, so he encouraged Bloom to ad-lib, resulting in a more natural and humorous portrayal that resonated with audiences. Although Bloom, who passed away in 2019, had a successful career, her role in Animal House remains one of her most iconic.